places of Middle-earth through these maps. Starting with this map of Beleriand, which accompanies the Silmarillion. This fold-out version comes with the illustrated by the author edition. That's a lovely colour map. On this we can see some locations that you may have heard of. More important events took place. For example, the Forest of Doriath, the home of King Thingol and his daughter Luthien, who would marry Beren, and who together famously stole a Silmaril from the crown of Morgoth. Doriath was also home for a while to Turin, the son of Hurin, who had a tragic fate, but before his end would slay the dragon Glaurung. Another famous city is the city of Gondolin, hidden in this mountain range on a high plateau, which would be the last of the great elven strongholds to fall to Morgoth. As after its fall and the flight of Tuor and Idril, that their son Erendil would go to Valinor and beg for the help of the Valar against Morgoth. And it was the coming of the Valar and the hosts from the west, including the elves, that would overthrow Morgoth in a long war in Beleriand. And it was this war and the power that was released into the world that caused this continent to sink into the sea at the end of the First Age. If you're familiar with the map from the Lord of the Rings that we will look at later, you may know the names Eredluin and Lindon. For this mountain range, this northern part of the Eredluin would be the only part of Beleriand that would remain, and the coast would come inland to the east, and you will see these mountains in the northwest part of the map of the Lord of the Rings. Now let's look at another map of Beleriand that comes also with the same book. This one is an earlier draft, hand drawn. Christopher Tolkien originally, helping his father. And you can see again Doriath, Beleriand, East Beleriand, West Beleriand, and the Eredlayan. What I like about this one is that the fortress of Morgoth, I believe it's Thangorodrim, is shown in the north, which it isn't on the other map. So it's nice to get a kind of early look at what the map was like. It's much the same, but is later refined. So that is the first age of Middle-earth. We're going to jump forward in time now and look at the maps from The Hobbit. There are two main maps featured in The Hobbit. I always open them upside down for some reason. Now this map shows the northern part of Mirkwood and the northern part of the range of the Misty Mountains. In the west, you can see Rivendell, Elrond, and this line which says Edge of the Wild. For this area was considered quite a wild and dangerous part of the world in the third age of Middle-earth. The dwarves and Bilbo, of course, were making for the Lonely Mountain here in the northeast, also labelled as the Desolation of Smaug, for the dragon made it impossible for people to live safely in this area. The dwarves, of course, with Gandalf and Bilbo, passed through Rivendell. Having come from the Shire, they passed over the Goblin Gate, where of course they were captured temporarily by the goblins, and Bilbo met Gollum and obtained the One Ring. The eagles rescued them, and it was from the eagle's eyrie that they had to climb down, and they made for Beorn's house. Gandalf, of course, departed, and we know that he went to Dol Guldur, which was further south in Mirkwood, a stronghold of Sauron. But the dwarves and Bilbo took the elf path, which is really one of the few safe ways to cross through Mirkwood. dwarves of the Iron Hills under Dane Ironfoot, and the men of Esgaroth of the Long Lake, and the elves of the Randale's halls, and orcs and wargs. Bilbo and Gandalf would return by a more circuitous route, going around the forest rather than through it. But there is another map which we should look at. And that is the map. Thoreau's map. This map was carried by Thorin Oakenshield and shows the lonely mountain, the running river, and the route here to the Long Lake of Esgaroth upon the Long Lake. Now, one interesting point about this map is that north is to the left. As you can see, east is up, where are the Iron Hills. Far to the north are the Grey Mountains and the Withered Heath, whence came the great worms, and west lies Mirkwood the Great. There are spiders. But this map has a secret which Elrond revealed. For it has moon letters, and I'm hoping I can show them using my torch here. Can you see the letters? In the book, they only become visible in the light of the moon on a certain day, but Elrond reveals them, and I believe the writing guides the dwarves to a secret entrance to the mountain, and by that route they're able to sneak in without Smaug seeing them. So I love that this is supplied with the Hobbit, and that it contains the moon letters. Finally, we will look at maps from the Lord of the Rings. ancient kingdom of Arnor was in this part of the world, as was the Shire. In the south, the other Dunedain kingdom of Gondor survives, but is threatened by the power of Mordor, of Sauron. He has returned to the Barad-dûr at the time of this book. Our Hobbit map showed this part of the world, Rivendell to the Lonely Mountain, Mirkwood, and the Misty Mountains. I really like this edition of the black and white map with the red place names. I think it's very pleasing to look at. It's very clear. It's one of my favorite versions of this map. I also included with this book is the other map, which you will be familiar with if you have read The Lord of the Rings. And this is the map of Gondor. And Rohan and Mordor. This is a much more zoomed in map for the later part of the story, where the characters and events all occur in this part of the world. The Ringbearer, of course, passes into Mordor through the Morgul Vale and the high pass of Curthungal, making for Mount Doom. The other members of the Fellowship, Aragorn, Gimli, Legolas, and the other hobbits, of course, first end up in Rohan, in Edoras. Of course, they make it to Isengard. Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas take the paths of the dead here at Dunharrow, passing through to Eric, where Aragorn summons the army of the dead to defeat the forces of Mordor, which have attacked southern Gondor, and he takes the fleet of ships that they used, and with the enemy defeated is able to bring reinforcements from southern Gondor up the Anduin to Minas Tirith. The army of the dead, of course, does not come to Minas Tirith in the book. Meanwhile, Gandalf and Pippin have made their way independently to Minas Tirith, where the armies of Mordor, under the command of the Witch King, have attacked the city. And the riders of Rohan course they do, in the Battle of the Pelennor Fields. So this map is really useful for keeping track of all the events that are happening in the book, especially later on. Again, we can see drawn by JRR Tolkien for The Return of the King, which would be Christopher Tolkien. So I want to show you one more map. And it's another version of the map of the Lord of the Rings. I'm going to zoom out the camera a little bit. There we go. I hope you can see that clearly. I really like this version. This is printed on a kind of parchment paper to make it look old. It isn't real parchment, it is paper, but it looks really nice. And you can see it's the same main map of the Lord of the Rings, with the Eredluin and Mirkwood, the Misty Mountains and Gondor and Mordor. But also marked on it, if you can see this red line, is the path of the ring bearer. Starting in Hobbiton at Bag End, passing through the Shire and the Old Forest, on to Bree, where they would meet Aragorn, then on past Weathertop to the fords of Briannon and to Rivendell. There, the Nine Walkers would pass south, and failing to cross at Caradhras, would instead pass through the mines of Moria, where Gandalf would fall, resting in Lothlorien and receiving gifts from the Lady Galadriel. They would pass down the river Anduin on boats provided by the Elves of Lorien to reach the Falls of Rauros at Amon Hen. Here, of course, the Fellowship would split Minas Morgul, through Cirith Ungol and the lair of Shelob into Mordor, where Frodo and Sam would take the ring to Mount Doom, and where the fate of Gollum would cause the ring to be cast into the fire. So I think this is a really nice map. If you love The Lord of the Rings, it's a nice thing to have. Maybe one day I'll get it framed and hung up, maybe. I hope you have enjoyed looking at these maps, looking at some of the places